The morning stillness hung over the North Atlantic like a shroud. 340 miles west of Iceland's rocky shores, the ocean stretched endlessly in every direction. Below the surface, steel death prowled the shipping lanes. Kapitän Lieutenant Friedrich Weber pressed his eye against the periscope lens. His submarine, U-507, cut through the dark waters with predatory silence. Weber had been hunting these waters for months. His crew trusted his instincts. His superiors counted on his kills. But what Weber saw through that periscope on September 12, 1942, would shatter everything he believed about this war. The horizon blazed with steel. 50 merchant vessels stretched across the ocean like a floating metropolis. Weber blinked hard. Fatigue played cruel tricks on submarine commanders. He looked again. The ships remained, real as the cold Atlantic around them. More vessels than he had ever seen in a single convoy. More tonnage than some ports handled in a year. At the convoy's heart sat something that made Weber's blood freeze. Ship after identical ship. The same boxy profile repeated endlessly. Liberty ships. American mass production made manifest on the ocean's surface. German intelligence had dismissed these vessels as propaganda. Inferior construction rushed from inexperienced shipyards. Weber counted them through his periscope. 27 identical hulls, each one carrying 10,000 tons of war material. The mathematics staggered him. This single convoy hauled more cargo than entire German supply operations, and intelligence reports suggested similar convoys departed American ports every few days. The strategic implications crashed over Weber like an icy wave. If Americans could build ships this fast, the entire U-boat campaign was doomed. Germany was fighting an assembly line. The battle had already been lost in American factories. This realization began 9 months earlier in Hawaiian waters. Pearl Harbor's flames consumed more than battleships and aircraft. They incinerated America's peacetime industrial restraint. Within weeks, emergency shipbuilding programs commandeered every available yard from coast to coast. Traditional construction methods wouldn't suffice, laying keels one at a time, riveting plates by hand, launching vessels after months of careful assembly. These techniques required years to produce the merchant fleet needed to supply Britain and Russia. America didn't have years. The solution emerged from an unexpected source. Henry Kaiser had built dams and bridges using revolutionary prefabrication methods. He had never constructed a single ship. Yet Kaiser proposed applying factory principles to maritime construction. The Maritime Commission thought him insane. Desperation overruled skepticism. The Liberty Ship program launched with Kaiser's untested theories as its foundation. These vessels would be deliberately simplified for mass production. 441 feet long, 56 feet wide, 10,000-ton capacity. Not elegant, functional. Maritime engineers called them ugly ducklings. Sailors used harsher terms, but they could be built impossibly fast. Kaiser promised 70 days from keel to delivery. Traditional shipbuilding required 8 to 12 months per vessel. 18 shipyards converted to Liberty production by March 1942. The transformation defied everything naval architects understood about ship construction. Prefabrication became the key. Entire hull sections were built inland, hundreds of miles from water. Bow assemblies took shape in Ohio factories. Stern sections emerged from Pennsylvania plants. Women who had been secretaries months earlier now operated 30-ton cranes. Workers who had never seen the ocean welded massive steel plates in interior workshops. The Liberty ship required 250,000 individual parts. 60,000 welded connections, 1,500 workers per vessel. Henry Ford's assembly line principles had conquered the seas. 7 building ways operated simultaneously at major yards. As one ship launched, another keel was already being laid. The scale overwhelmed traditional thinking about maritime construction. Bethlehem, Fairfield, and Baltimore could build 4 Liberty ships concurrently. Richmond Shipyard No. 2 in California would eventually launch one completed vessel every 24 hours. Peak production schedules that made experienced shipbuilders question their sanity. German naval intelligence received these production reports throughout early 1942. Gross Admiral Karl Dönitz commanded the U-boat fleet with methodical precision. He read American construction estimates and dismissed them as psychological warfare. Allied propaganda designed to demoralize submarine crews. The numbers seemed impossible. No shipyard in human history had achieved such production rates. Dönitz trusted his experience over enemy claims. The U-boat campaign would starve Britain through simple mathematics. Sink merchant ships faster than they could be replaced. Captain Lieutenant Weber had prowled the Atlantic for 19 months when he encountered that September convoy. His war diary, recovered from German archives decades later, documented growing unease beneath professional observations. U-507 had departed Lorient, France, on August 28, 1942. 14 torpedoes filled her tubes. Provisions for 60 days of patrol. Weber commanded 48 men crammed into a steel cylinder 220 feet long, barely 20 feet wide. The previous year had brought successful hunting. 11 Allied merchants totaling 47,000 tons rested on the ocean floor thanks to Weber's torpedoes. He wore the Knight's Cross earned after his 7th kill. His crew respected his judgment. The Kriegsmarine considered him among their most effective commanders. Yet recent months had shown disturbing trends. Convoys grew larger, escorts multiplied, and increasingly, Weber encountered those identical boxy silhouettes. Liberty ships. Intelligence briefings at Lorient mentioned these vessels dismissively. American propaganda about industrial capacity. Hastily built ships prone to structural failure. Easy targets that would break apart in Atlantic storms. Weber had sunk 2 Liberty ships in July. They hadn't broken apart easily. Their crews fought desperately to save them even as torpedo damage flooded their holds. Within weeks, intelligence reported identical replacement vessels filling the same convoy positions. New ships replacing the dead with mechanical regularity. Through his periscope that September morning, Weber counted the impossible. Convoy SC-100, though he didn't know its designation. 50 merchant vessels arranged in 9 columns, stretching 4 miles across the ocean. At the convoy's center, 27 Liberty ships maintained perfect formation. Weber's training immediately calculated attack geometry. Northwest wind at 15 knots. Sea state 3. Convoy speed approximately 8 knots. Escort vessels numbered 6 destroyers, 4 corvettes, 2 armed trawlers. But different numbers dominated Weber's thoughts. 27 Liberty ships, each carrying roughly 10,000 tons of cargo. 270,000 tons of war material. Tanks, aircraft, ammunition, food, fuel. Enough to sustain Britain's resistance for weeks, and this represented just one convoy among dozens crossing the Atlantic monthly. The mathematics became horrifying. If Americans produced ships this rapidly, if they filled the Atlantic with such massive convoys, then U-boat strategy was fundamentally flawed. Weber submerged to 60 meters and summoned his officers to the cramped wardroom. Oberleutnant Hans Gruber studied the plotting table where they had marked convoy composition. 27 identical vessels, Gruber observed quietly. Intelligence claimed American mass production was propaganda. The intelligence briefings were wrong, Weber replied. He had fought these waters long enough to recognize when doctrine collided with reality. Signal Lorient. Report convoy size and composition. Request permission to attack. The response arrived 3 hours later. Attack authorized. All available U-boats vectoring to your position. This is now Wolfpack Operation Eiswolf. You are designated Attack Coordinator. 8 U-boats converged on SC-100's position within 12 hours. Traditional Wolfpack tactics should have created a massacre. 8 submarines against 50 merchants, even with convoy escorts. The mathematics favored the attackers. They had perfected these methods through 2 years of Atlantic warfare. The battle unfolded differently than Weber expected. Liberty ships proved far more resilient than intelligence had predicted. Their welded hulls, considered inferior to riveted construction by traditional standards, absorbed tremendous punishment. Weber watched U-618 put 2 torpedoes into a Liberty ship. Target 7, they designated her. The vessel's bow crumpled, forward holds flooded. Her deck tilted at severe angles. She should have sunk within minutes. Instead, her crew fought for 6 hours to save her. Emergency pumps ran continuously. Damage control parties shored compromised bulkheads. The ship's armed guard, U.S. Navy gunners assigned to merchant vessels, kept firing at any surfacing U-boat. Their persistent resistance forced submarines to remain submerged, limiting attack options. Target 7 refused to die. For 6 agonizing hours, Weber observed the damaged Liberty ship's survival battle. Her crew deployed emergency buoyancy measures that German intelligence had never documented. Portable pumps appeared from storage compartments, dozens of them working to prevent bilge water from overwhelming forward sections. The ship's master made a critical decision. Rather than maintaining course with the convoy, he turned his damaged bow into the wind. This reduced water pressure against compromised bulkheads. The maneuver succeeded. By late afternoon, Target 7 had stabilized. A rescue tug from Iceland raced toward her position. She would survive for repairs and return to service within 8 weeks. Weber noted in his war diary that enemy damage control capabilities exceeded all previous assessments. The Wolfpack pressed attacks through September 13th and 14th. 8 U-boats fired 41 torpedoes at convoy SC-100. They sank 6 vessels. 3 Liberty ships, 2 British tramps, 1 Norwegian tanker. By traditional standards, this represented significant success. Weber understood the mathematics had shifted fundamentally. 6 ships sunk. 44 survived. Those 6 losses would be replaced by American shipyards within 10 days. His U-boat flotilla had expended most torpedoes, requiring return to port for rearming. A round trip consuming 3 weeks minimum. The exchange rate spelled disaster. American shipyards produced Liberty ships faster than U-boats could destroy them, even during successful attacks. Weber radioed Lorient on September 15th. Convoy attack concluded. Recommend immediate strategic reassessment. Enemy replacement capacity exceeds attrition capabilities. U-boat command's response was predictable. Continue patrol. Locate additional targets. Weber had seen enough. That night, surfacing to recharge batteries under cover of darkness, he gathered his officers on the conning tower. The Atlantic stretched endlessly around them, cold and indifferent to human ambitions. "We're losing," Weber stated quietly. No subordinate contradicted him. They had all calculated the numbers. They had all witnessed Liberty ships absorbing damage that should have destroyed traditional vessels. They had all observed how quickly replacement ships appeared. Oberleutnant Gruber voiced what everyone understood. If Americans build ships this rapidly, how fast can they build destroyers? How fast can they construct submarine hunters? The question hung in salt air like a death sentence. Within 6 months, they would learn the answer. American shipyards that had perfected Liberty ship construction would pivot to destroyer escorts. The same assembly line efficiency would produce them at rates that made traditional naval calculations obsolete. By 1943, hunter-to-prey ratios in the Atlantic would reverse completely. The Battle of the Atlantic was already decided that September 1942, though combat would continue for another 2 years. Victory wasn't determined on battlefields. It was welded together in American shipyards, operating 24 hours daily, launching vessels at unprecedented pace. U-507 returned to Lorient on October 3, 1942. Weber submitted detailed after-action reports emphasizing strategic implications of American production capacity. The reports were filed and largely ignored. German naval doctrine still assumed sinking ships faster than replacement would win the Atlantic campaign. 3 months later, U-507 departed on her next patrol. She never returned. Depth charges from a British destroyer ended her war on January 13, 1943. Weber and his entire crew perished. His final radio transmission, decoded by Allied intelligence after the war, reported sighting another large convoy. This one contained 38 Liberty ships. The pattern Weber had recognized was accelerating beyond German comprehension. American shipyards delivered 597 Liberty ships by year's end 1942. In 1943, they would deliver 1,422. Production rates had moved from impossible to incomprehensible. Strategic impact extended far beyond simple replacement tonnage. Each vessel represented industrial intent that German planners had failed to grasp. The ships were only the most visible component of a supply system dwarfing anything previously attempted in military history. Richmond Shipyard No. 2 achieved what maritime experts had declared impossible. November 12, 1942, they launched Liberty ship SS Robert E. Peary just 4 days, 15 hours, 30 minutes after laying her keel. The vessel was fully operational, engines tested, holds inspected, ready for cargo. This wasn't publicity stunt construction with hollow hulls. Robert E. Peary sailed to Pacific theaters, made 6 round-trip voyages carrying war material to Australia and Southwest Pacific operations, served until war's end. She proved that even maximally accelerated construction produced seaworthy vessels. German naval intelligence received reports of the 4-day ship and dismissed them as propaganda. Their analysts calculated it was mathematically impossible to complete required welding, install engines and equipment, conduct sea trials in such time frames. The analysts were correct about traditional shipbuilding methods. They were wrong about American industrial innovation. The secret wasn't just prefabrication, it was total system integration. While Richmond assembled Robert E. Peary, her engines were manufactured in Pennsylvania. Her propeller shaft took shape in Ohio. Her anchor chain emerged from Massachusetts factories. Coordination across thousands of suppliers, transported via inland logistics networks that themselves represented industrial marvels, enabled impossible construction pace. By early 1943, 18 American shipyards were producing Liberty ships. Average construction time had dropped to 42 days. At peak efficiency, new Liberty ships entered service every 8 hours, somewhere in America. Production rates exceeded even optimistic projections. Gross Admiral Dönitz faced these implications in daily conferences with Hitler on March 18, 1943. Intelligence estimates now confirmed American claims. Allies were building merchant tonnage 3 times faster than U-boats could sink it. The mathematics were irreversible. Hitler demanded increased U-boat production. Dönitz explained reality. Building more submarines required the same steel and resources needed for surface fleet and army equipment. Germany's industrial capacity couldn't match American shipbuilding, even if all resources were redirected to U-boat construction. The Führer's response, documented in conference minutes, revealed complete incomprehension of industrial-scale warfare. Then U-boats must sink ships faster. This wasn't strategy. It was desperation masquerading as determination. Meanwhile, Liberty ships were transforming global logistics. Each vessel could carry 2,840 jeeps, or 440 light tanks, or 230 million rounds of rifle ammunition. Standardization meant any Liberty ship could transport any cargo to any destination. Port facilities worldwide adapted to their dimensions. The SS Stephen Hopkins demonstrated another Liberty ship characteristic German intelligence had underestimated. September 27, 1942. She encountered German commerce raider Steyr in the South Atlantic. Outgunned and outmaneuvered, Hopkins's armed guard crew fought back with their single 4-inch deck gun. The ensuing battle lasted 20 minutes. Hopkins was destroyed, but not before her gunners landed several hits on Steyr, causing enough damage that the German raider had to be scuttled hours later. A mass-produced merchant vessel had destroyed a purpose-built warship through determination and surprisingly effective armament. Stories like Hopkins spread through the merchant marine. Liberty ships might be ugly and uncomfortable, but they were tough and fought back. Psychological impact on crews was significant. They weren't sailing defenseless targets anymore. By mid-1943, Liberty ships dominated Allied convoy composition. Their uniform speed, capacity, and handling characteristics simplified convoy operations. Commodores could coordinate 50 ships with confidence that all would respond similarly to maneuvering orders. This standardization multiplied operational efficiency exponentially. Production numbers revealed the story. By December 1943, 2019 Liberty ships had been delivered. American shipyards had exceeded Dönitz's worst projections. The Atlantic was filling with merchant tonnage faster than the entire U-boat fleet could possibly sink it. Human costs behind the Liberty ship program remained largely invisible to those counting hulls and tonnage. Each vessel required approximately 1,500 workers operating across multiple shifts. At peak production, with 2,710 Liberty ships ultimately completed, roughly 4 million Americans worked in shipbuilding industry, a workforce larger than the entire United States Army in 1939. Demographics of this workforce revolutionized American industry. Women comprised roughly 27% of shipyard workers by 1943. Rosie the Riveter wasn't propaganda. She was Clara Mortensen welding hull plates at Richmond Shipyard. Helen Johnson operating massive cranes at Bethlehem Fairfield. Thousands of women performing work considered exclusively male just 2 years earlier. African Americans found opportunities in shipyards that had been closed to them in peacetime industries. While discrimination persisted, desperate need for labor opened positions representing significant economic advancement. Integrated work crews became commonplace, challenging social barriers through practical necessity of wartime production. The work carried enormous dangers. Shipyard fatalities numbered in thousands across war years. Welders fell from scaffolding. Crane operators miscalculated loads. Workers were crushed by moving hull sections. Portland Oregonian documented 53 deaths at local shipyards in 1943 alone. Multiply this across all facilities and human costs become staggering. Yet work continued. Shipyard workers understood their labor saved lives overseas. Every Liberty ship reaching Britain with tanks and ammunition was one more convoy that wouldn't be destroyed. Every vessel carrying food prevented starvation. Connection between welding hull plates in California and defeating fascism in Europe was direct and measurable. The vessels proved far more capable than hasty construction suggested. Liberty ships sailed to Murmansk through Arctic ice, to Calcutta through tropical storms, to Brisbane through submarine-infested waters. They served in every theater, carrying every type of cargo imaginable. Some Liberty ships were converted for specialized purposes. Hospital ships, ammunition carriers, tank transporters, aircraft transports. The basic hull proved adaptable to numerous military requirements, multiplying strategic value beyond simple cargo capacity. SS John W. Brown demonstrated exceptional versatility during Operation Overlord. She carried troops to Normandy on D-Day, then returned for vehicles and ammunition in subsequent crossings. Her crew made 11 round trips across English Channel in June and July 1944, becoming floating shuttle in the massive logistics operation sustaining the invasion. By late 1944, Liberty ships had become so numerous that German U-boat commanders reported difficulty finding non-Liberty targets. The Atlantic was filled with them. Sinking one meant virtually nothing. 3 more were already en route to replace it. Psychological impact on U-boat crews became devastating. Veterans of the 1940-1941 happy time, when merchant ships were easy prey, now faced an ocean dominated by vessels that wouldn't sink easily. Accompanied by escorts that had become lethally effective, supported by air cover that could locate submarines with increasing precision. Kapitän zur See Erich Topp, one of Germany's most successful U-boat commanders, stated in post-war interviews that by 1944, they knew they were fighting American factories, not just American ships. You could sink a convoy and know that everything destroyed had already been replaced before you could reload torpedoes. It was hopeless. Statistics confirmed this despair. In 1942, U-boats sank 1,664 Allied ships, totaling 7.8 million tons. But Allied shipyards, dominated by American Liberty ship production, launched 7.2 million tons. The gap was closing. In 1943, U-boats sank 597 ships, 3.2 million tons, while Allied yards produced 14.2 million tons. The war was over mathematically, though killing continued for another 2 years. Final accounting revealed the magnitude of American industrial achievement. 2,710 Liberty ships were built between 1941 and 1945. They carried 75% of all cargo shipped overseas during the war. Not one convoy with Liberty ships was ever turned back due to losses. Replacement rate always exceeded attrition. The Liberty ship program's impact extended beyond Atlantic battlefields into fundamental transformation of post-war maritime commerce. Construction techniques developed under wartime pressure became standard industry practice. Welding instead of riveting. Prefabrication instead of sequential assembly. Standardization instead of custom design. Henry Kaiser's assembly line methods proved ship construction times could be reduced by 75% without sacrificing seaworthiness. Traditional maritime establishments had resisted these innovations before the war, citing safety concerns and quality issues. Liberty ships proved traditionalists wrong through sheer volume of successful service. Of 2,710 Liberty ships built, 2,400 survived the war. This 88% survival rate, despite operating in history's most dangerous maritime environment, validated the welded construction that conservative engineers had doubted. Ships designed for 5-year service lifespans Many served 20 years or more in post-war merchant fleets. Economic implications rippled through the post-war world. American shipyards that had perfected mass production techniques could undercut European shipbuilding prices by 40%. This advantage helped establish American dominance in commercial shipbuilding through the 1950s, fundamentally altering global maritime economics. Surplus Liberty ships became the foundation of post-war merchant marines worldwide. Greece, Norway, Britain, and dozens of other nations purchased Liberty ships at liquidation prices, creating instant commercial fleets. SS Hellas Liberty, originally launched as SS Arthur M. Huddle in 1943, sailed as commercial freighter until 1979. 36 years of service from a vessel designed for 5. Some Liberty ships found unusual post-war careers. SS Albert M. Bow became a floating grain elevator in Brazil. SS Charles H. Kugel was converted into oceanographic research vessel. SS John W. Brown and SS Jeremiah O'Brien were preserved as museum ships, the only operational Liberty ships remaining today. Strategic lessons learned from Liberty ship operations influenced Cold War planning. The ability to rapidly mobilize industrial production for military purposes became a cornerstone of American defense strategy. The concept that wars could be won through manufacturing capacity as much as battlefield tactics shaped military doctrine for decades. Soviet planners studied American shipbuilding methods extensively. Documentation captured after the Cold War revealed Stalin-ordered detailed analysis of Liberty ship production techniques. Soviet shipyards attempted to replicate American mass production methods with limited success. They lacked the integrated supply chain and decentralized industrial base that made American methods effective. The Liberty ship program also demonstrated strategic value of standardization at unprecedented scale. Having 2,710 nearly identical vessels simplified logistics enormously. Spare parts were interchangeable. Crews could transfer between ships with minimal retraining. Port facilities worldwide could be optimized for single-ship design. This standardization multiplied operational efficiency exponentially. Maritime historians recognize Liberty ships as representing the moment when industrial warfare reached full maturity. Previous conflicts had demonstrated importance of industrial capacity. American Civil War, World War I. But never before had manufacturing capability so completely dominated strategic outcomes. Liberty ship program proved that advanced industrial economies could overwhelm opponents through sheer production volume. The final Liberty ship, SS Albert M. Bow, was delivered October 30, 1945, nearly 2 months after Japan's surrender. She was immediately placed in reserve, never carrying single wartime cargo. Her existence symbolized ultimate achievement. America had built so many ships that war ended before they could all be used. Economic cost had been immense, approximately $2 billion in 1940s currency, equivalent to roughly $35 billion today. But return on investment was incalculable. Liberty ships had enabled victory in Europe, sustained Britain through starvation sieges, equipped Soviet Union to defeat Germany's Eastern armies, supplied Pacific operations across 8,000 miles of ocean. That moment when Kapitän-Leutnant Friedrich Weber peered through his periscope and saw 50 ships on the horizon wasn't just tactical encounter. It was the instant when experienced eyes confirmed what German strategic planning had refused to acknowledge. America's industrial capacity wasn't exaggerated propaganda, it was terrifyingly real. Weber's U-507 represented everything the Kriegsmarine had perfected: experienced crews, proven tactics, technological refinement through years of combat evolution. But against an opponent who could replace losses faster than they could be inflicted, expertise became irrelevant. Germans were fighting battles. Americans were operating factories. Liberty Ship Program ultimately produced more than ships. It produced strategic lesson that would echo through remainder of 20th century. In modern warfare between industrial powers, manufacturing capacity determines victory more certainly than battlefield courage. Bravest German submariners, most skilled U-boat commanders, most determined Nazi leadership. None of it mattered against opponent who could launch complete merchant vessel every 8 hours. Mathematical inevitability was brutal in its simplicity. Germany's entire shipbuilding capacity, even operating at maximum efficiency, could not produce vessels at 10% the rate of American Liberty ship construction. Add British and Canadian shipyards to Allied Total and Gap, became completely unbridgeable. German planners had gambled that American industrial claims were inflated. They lost that gamble catastrophically. Human cost of this industrial competition was measured in thousands of sailors on both sides. U-boat crews died at rates exceeding 70%, highest casualty rate of any military service in World War II. Merchant mariners faced similar dangers, with American merchant marine casualties proportionately higher than any armed service except Marine Corps. These men fought and died while industrial production determined war's outcome regardless of their sacrifice. Liberty ships themselves became something unexpected, symbols of democratic industrial power. These ships, built by workers who had been housewives, farmers, and factory hands 18 months earlier, defeated the submarine fleet of history's most militarized society. Ships were ugly, uncomfortable, built by amateurs. They won anyway, through sheer overwhelming numbers. 75 years after Weber's periscope sighting that September morning in 1942, 2 Liberty ships remain operational: SS John W. Brown and SS Jeremiah O'Brien. Both still sail occasionally, maintained by volunteer crews who preserve these vessels as floating monuments to industrial mobilization. Standing on their welded decks, you can still see hasty construction marks, functional simplicity, complete absence of aesthetic consideration. These ships were built to win a war, not to be beautiful. They succeeded spectacularly. 2,710 Liberty ships carried 75% of all cargo shipped overseas during World War II, roughly 227 million tons of material. They sustained Britain through starvation sieges, equipped Soviet armies that destroyed Nazi Germany, supplied Pacific operations across vast oceans, enabled Normandy invasion that liberated Europe. When Kapitän Leutnant Weber saw those 50 ships on the horizon that September morning in 1942, he was witnessing industrial future of warfare. Within 3 years, that future would produce nuclear weapons, jet aircraft, guided missiles, electronic warfare systems. But none of these technological marvels would have reached their destinations without ugly, utilitarian merchant ships that carried them across oceans faster than enemies could sink them. Liberty ships proved fundamental principle that remains valid today. In conflicts between industrial powers, the side that can produce and replace equipment faster will ultimately prevail, regardless of tactical brilliance or strategic genius on battlefield. German U-boat commanders learned this lesson through defeat. American shipyard workers proved it through production. 50 Liberty ships on the horizon delivered message with unmistakable clarity. This war would be won not by bravest warriors, but by most productive factories.